Yeah, hello and welcome to this video which covers the game between, I'm not going to pronounce that correctly, hetraie and Atrophied. No, not getting any laurels for that probably. So let's look at the game. I hope I'm better at that. I should mention that the times are not correct here. It automatically gives the 15:15 here in the software. So, by the way, I tried to do it on Lichess, just to mention it, but it doesn't have this timestamps either, so I didn't see a big point of completely redoing my layout. The timestamps would have been nice, but I didn't get them on Lichess. So let's get going. We have a King's Indian in this game, and the white player opts for the classical variation and plays d5, the Petrosian system. This line is not much in fashion nowadays. In fact, never has been in big fashion. There was a period of time in the early 1990s when Vladimir Kramnik played it successfully to beat Kasparov, for example, in a pretty nice game. Nowadays, it's not seen all that often, even though I don't particularly understand why this is the case. I don't think it has less of a bite than many other lines that white plays regularly. One point of the Petrosian is that that white has not yet castled while having cleared the central situations. In some lines, this can really be relevant. White is delaying castling. This is especially true if black plays one of the less popular lines. For example, let's say something like knight h5 or so. Something like g3 makes lots of sense. You can compare this variation sometimes with the h3 line. Something like that, for example, is well known in the h3 lines, where g3 is a move. And you can really argue that h3 is not particularly useful here. You would rather have the bishop on e2. So there are some parallels, as usual, in those closed openings. Okay, black went a5, which is the tried and tested main line, securing some space on the queen side and stopping or stalling white's advance, like this. Bishop g5, played by white, is by far the main move, and black goes h6. I think it's a good idea to get this move in right away. If you don't do that and play, let's say here, and start with this move, I think then white gains an additional option by playing an early knight d2. The thing is, and important to understand, that in the classical King's Indian, the ideal setup for white is something like this. Here he would not go to h4, but back to e3 probably, where we get this optimal setup. Knights here, bishops here. Why is this the best possible setup? White is covering the center very reliably with those knights, and the attack on the queen side would be extremely effective because the bishop is involved here. In the mainline classical, oftentimes white combines knight f3 to e1 to d3 and then bishop e3. This is just quicker, and the knight on d2 is more aggressive than the knight on d3, as the knight here has c4 after a later c4, c5. So black is right in playing h6 immediately. That gets this option out of the way. Now however, white surprisingly plays bishop e3 back. That in my mind doesn't make any sense. You should just go to h4 and play the main line. This has been played a lot over the years. Black is usually starting with knight a6, after which white castles or plays knight d2. Note that here the bishop is on h4, not on e3, thus not supporting any queenside play. Yeah, this is the start of the main line, which usually continues with moves like queen to e8, castles, knight h7, things like that. It's a bit of a move order maze sometimes. White went to e3, however, and I don't think that this is all that great. Black now has to play the move that he plays, but he did play it, knight g4. You need to disturb white immediately here before he sets up the knight d2 scheme. That would be pretty bad. So knight g4 disturbing white. White went to d2. You can also ask, if he wanted all that, why not this immediately? Absolutely right. Yeah, if he wanted to put the bishop here, he should have done so immediately. Yeah, if here knight g4, you at least have the additional option of going bishop to g5, which is a legitimate line. It's okay for black, but definitely in comparison, I think it makes more sense than this. Yeah, he went back to d2, and black played f5, the standard pawn break that black is often going for. h3, back to f6. So I think while white hasn't done all that much in the last couple of moves, black got his main play in with f5. Yeah, white now captured on f5. This is probably the best choice. It was impossible to keep the center now anymore. Something like that is not helping all that much. So takes, queen c1. I'm a little bit critical of that as well. I really don't think that provoking king h7 helps a lot. But it's probably, I mean, it's not that terrible. It just doesn't lead to all that much. So king h7. Instead of this, f4 was also an option. Bit of an unusual pawn formation, but it makes some sense because here the e4 square, which is usually the problem with pushing the pawn up to f4, is definitely not in white's hands. Black has things like that, or bishop f5, and should be very okay here. He played king h7. I think after king h7, white probably should have done something a lot more energetic than what he did. He played queen to c2. I have to look up in my notes. I don't see the next move here, and I don't quite know the games by heart. He had interesting ideas in this situation. Something like, for example, the pretty brutal move g4 was interesting. Yeah, what is the point here? If black takes this, we recapture. And this, in fact, is pretty nice. Look at this. Knight takes, there's knight g5. And this is absolutely terrible for black. Yeah, something like that you're not going to survive. So g4 was an interesting option. Black has to react differently. Probably e4 is what you have to do. And then the position is extremely complicated and really tough to assess. This was the thing. White should have played g4 and really make a mess out of it. Yeah, this is pointing towards f4, probably being the better choice here for black. White, however, played queen c2. And this doesn't really do all that much. It prepares long castles, but the king is unsafe on the queen side, as we will see. Knight a6. Now long castles. And knight b4. I'm sorry, I didn't play knight b4 immediately. It was possible. e4 is also a good move. And now knight takes d5 was an interesting trick. Knight b4 also was possible here right away. The idea being that after queen to b1, black can take on d5. The knight on h4 is always a little bit stranded. That move was played in the game. It's the same idea, of course. Takes and queen takes h4. Yeah, what is the main point of this position? I think that one issue for white is that his king is potentially quite unsafe. This is pretty much underlined after this. The next move that black now found is very strong. He played knight to b4. And after that, white does not really get any decent chance anymore to get back in the game. He probably should have taken on a5 in this position. Yeah, this is the better choice. It opens up the a-file, but it does not yet lead into any specific problem For example, if black just continues to develop, you go like rook b1, king b1. I think this is probably equalish. This is also why this was probably a bit better, yeah, than directly taking on d5. So this is what happened. And after queen d8, bishop c3 was played. And now black's very good move was knight b4. That is strong. Yeah, directly challenging the white pieces. And the thing is, white definitely does not want to give up this bishop. Yeah, getting into a situation where this bishop here doesn't have any kind of opponent, let's say. But you also don't like to do what in the game was played, to give up the good knight on d5 and open up the a file. So takes, yeah, and now white's choices are all pretty awful. He took here, taking on b4 doesn't help either. Yeah, something like that.
Check. Check.
It's just pretty awful. Currently, black is even a pawn up, in addition to his really excellent position. So it was traded on g7, and now g4. Yeah, desperately trying to make something happen, but it doesn't really do much at the end, and a2 was hanging. So probably white had to do this. It's not much fun. Black's moves are easy, something like bishop e6, queen f6. Yeah, but it's probably better than this. Rook takes a2. This is just too important a pawn to give up. So g takes f5. Bishop takes.
Check.
And black here is winning. There is not much hope for white. Main threat now is e3.
Check. Check.
Not keeping all the material, and the thing is, the white king will never find a safe place anymore. You can, even if white would have like could teleport the king to any given square, there is no safe square. Even h2, which is relatively best, doesn't feel particularly safe. So
check. Check.
Yeah, if white takes on b7, what's happening? Queen
Check.
d4. Yeah, queen d4 is good enough. Something like that is going to be a pretty easy win. And the game, white gave up that and took on f5, which
check.
Ultimately failed to queen b1 check, after which white resigned. So king d2, e3 was the cute point at the end. So let's have a wrap-up of this game, some key moments. I think white's opening player is fairly harmless with bishop to e3, and I think what black did was fine. He probably should go f4 in this position to avoid this g4 option, which looked a little bit that looked dangerous, really. Here the play will become also quite sharp. For example, something like that is possible. Any idea what's going on? I have no idea. Yeah, it's pretty sharp. So here g4 was really interesting. The other interesting move was g3, but g4 is the move that probably fits best with what white did before. Of course, black does not have to take on g4. This was just one line. Knight a6 is possible, or again f4. After queen c2, I think here knight b4 was an improvement, after which black is just better. And after white missed the opportunity here to take on a5, it was really necessary. Not so much because a pawn could be taken, but to take control over the b4 square. After white has not taken this opportunity, I think the game really turned into black's favor quite clearly. and it was also relatively easy for black to play. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the coverage of this typically fighting King's Indian game. Thanks for watching.